The Photoshop toolbox. This is the toolbox in Photoshop. Should it not appear on your screen, go to the window menu and choose Tools. You'll see that's toggled the toolbox off, and if I go back to the window menu and choose Tools, then it switches it back on again. Moving your cursor over a tool and pausing before you move is that it will then come up with a tooltip that tells you not only what the name of the tool is, but also the letter at the end, M in this case, indicates its keyboard shortcut, which I really advise you getting used to because it makes switching tools so much easier. I'm just going to show you some little purposes of each tool. So for example, starting with the rectangular marquee, I could use this as a cropping tool. So if I want to crop in quite tight onto this subject, it's an action shot and I want the feeling that we're really in there amongst the shot. So I've drawn myself a rectangular marquee, and if I go to the image menu then choose crop, it has now cropped that photograph according to my rectangular marquee. Selecting my history, I'm just going to go back a state, so I go back to where it was there, and I can then go back a further state and then deselect that. And holding down the space bar, same on both Mac and Windows, and clicking with the mouse, I can just remove the window around again. Another purpose of this tool would be to go to the Layers menu, click the little new layer icon to add a new layer, and then to draw myself a rectangular marquee, here for example, click onto the foreground colour square, choose myself a nice strong colour, click OK. Really good keyboard shortcut here is Alt and Backspace, same on both Macintosh and Windows, and what this does is this will flood my selection with 100% of the foreground colour. I use this particular keyboard shortcut a lot. Now on a Mac, Apple D, or on Windows, Control D to cancel a selection, or you can go to the Select menu and choose Deselect. Moving over to the layer palette, I could then double click to change the opacity of this layer, so I could change it to 60% and press enter. So I've just got a nice semi-transparent little panel, and then I could put some text over the top of it. So now changing to my T tool and then clicking on top of this is I could now type in a little caption against this photograph. So I'm going to put the great and a return of Valentino. It's the great Valentino Rossi. I can highlight my text. I can make my text a little bit larger from the menu at the top of the screen, maybe a little bit larger still. 64 points sounds good, and then click here to change the text colour, and I'm going to go for a near white colour. Got something like that. Now moving on to some other tools, this tool is the layer moving tool, or the move tool, and it's V is the keyboard shortcut. So if I now change to my V tool, you can see I've got 3 layers so far in this image: the original background, the little semi-transparent red panel, and my type on a separate layer. And with that layer highlighted in blue, I can then just move that type nice and neatly. On the subject of moving, you can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard, and these will move any object around, or any layer, 1 pixel at a time, which tends to make moving easier when you're trying to do fine increments. I'm going to go to my history palette, and I'm going to click back onto the opening snapshot of the image, which has now undone all the different steps that I've done so far. It's the same as choosing the revert command from the file menu, this one here. Now the lasso tool, there's various different versions of the lasso tool. There's the freehand version of the lasso tool, so if I wanted to select the actual motorcycle and Valentino himself, I could click and keep my finger down, and I have to now very accurately trace around the edge of where the bike meets the background. Now depending on how many bottles of scotch you had last night, this is either a highly inaccurate method or a totally inaccurate method, and I do not recommend it. You can reminds me a bit of that thing you used to do as a kid where you had to move the little ring through the wire at the fair, and if the buzzer went off then they took your money off you. So a completely no hopersville, that one. Again, doing Apple D or Control D on a Mac to cancel that selection. Now any tools on the toolbox that have a little arrow in the corner here means that you can click and keep your finger down, and then they have other features, other tools associated. Now this one is called the polygonal lasso tool, and how this one works is that you click and then it follows you around. So this one is a slight improvement on the last tool, so it basically just keeps following you around so that you can then set loads of points. I have to say I'm not a great fan of this tool, because as it's just happened there, is it just went off in my hand, and other times it just doesn't want to seem to complete itself, and I see more people restarting Photoshop due to this clumsy interpretation of this tool than anything else. Again, Apple D or Control D to cancel that selection. The third tool down here is the magnetic lasso. On occasions this will give you very good results, but it depends on the difference between the colour of the object you're trying to select and the colour of the background. Here I'm going to click and keep my finger down, and keeping my finger down on the mouse is I'm gently going to follow the curve of where the bike meets its background, and you can see it's laying down a little similar to a path. And you go all the way around, can take quite a lot of time. It's already made a mistake around the top of the brake there, and you basically go along like this. Sometimes this can get some good results. Made another mistake around the glove, another one there. Oh, it doesn't, you can see it's not really fully understanding, and if I then just go round here and go back to the beginning and let go, have a look along here. As you can see, it's made quite a few mistakes where it couldn't interpret the difference between the edge of the white writing on his leathers and the background. Again, Apple D or Control D to cancel that selection. If I am using the lasso tool, my preference is to use the lasso tool as is, and if you hold down the Alt key on both Mac and Windows, you can get a similar result to the magnetic lasso. So if I click and keep my finger down, you'll see that it follows me around, and all I then do is I click at each point. And this is my preferred method of using this tool, and I still use this a lot for making selections. So I'm keeping the Alt key down throughout the whole duration of this process, but the advantage of this is that I'm fully in control of it, and when I want to join up and make the selection complete, all I have to do is to let go of the Alt key. So I'm going to take a bit of a shortcut, go all the way round, get back to there, let go of the Alt key, and then it joins up. Much more controllable method of using the lasso tool. Again, Apple D or Control D to cancel that selection. Now, one of my favourites, the Magic Wand tool. Lots of people don't like this tool, and lots of people tend to use it all the time. It really depends on what you do. If you have an area of similar colour, this is what the Magic Wand tool is great for selecting. So here you can see in the slightly blurred background, if I just click with the Magic Wand tool, then it's done that. Now, it selects areas based upon this tolerance value. The higher the tolerance value, the more it will select. So if I upped this value to 100 and then did an Apple D or Control D, and if I click again now in the same area, you can see how it's broadened its area of selection. It does this based upon the similarity of colour. My advice is that if you're going over a tolerance of about 40 or 50, quite simply this tool isn't going to work for you. So you'll have to then consider other selection methods. See some of the other presentations in this series. Again, Apple D or Control D. I'm going to change back to a tolerance of 30, and then I'm going to click into the background. Now, a nice way of using this tool, hold down the Shift key and you'll see a little plus symbol appears next to it, and this then allows you to make multiple clicks and to slowly build up your selection by constantly clicking into different areas. It can take a little bit of time, but still is a very good technique, and one which I use a great deal for building up selections. So there, I've got most of that bit done. Not too bad, but will take a little bit of time, so on, so on, and so on. Again, Apple D to cancel that selection. This is the crop tool. Now, the crop tool, similar to what I just did with the rectangle tool, is that this allows me to then drag and draw a crop area. But the advantage of using this tool is that the uncropped areas at the moment are highlighted in a sort of a different way, and it then allows me to be able to move the crop dynamically. So it's actually more advantageous using this than a rectangle. And then when you've decided that you've got your crop just perfect, you hit either the return or enter keys, and then it actually performs the crop. Lastly, in this little section, the other tool that we have here is the image slicing tool. Now, with the image slice tool, is you might click and drag to then create some various slices over your image. And the reason why you might want to slice an image is if you are taking a large image to be portrayed on the internet, is that some large images don't actually work well with the way that HTML works. So you'll find that by slicing images into different little sections and then saving it using the File menu and Save for Web feature, is you can save the individual slices, which will actually constitute the photograph out of several little slices, and it will actually build on a web screen much faster. I've used this many times and it's a feature that works very well, image slicing.